Greetings, and greetings once again. Welcome to our show, The Silence of Our Friends. That's right. You are streaming live with us if you're over on YouTube or Facebook, The Silence of Our Friends. You've joined us tonight and we welcome you. And I'm George M. Matthews II. I appreciate you so very much taking your time that is so precious, time, of course, that you'll never see exactly again, a day in which you'll never see again, moments in which you'll never see again, but you've chosen to share them with me, and I appreciate it so much. Now, you can do me a kind favor, a kind gesture, and to make sure that we're connecting with as many people as possible. So if you're viewing us by way of Facebook now, if you would share this show to your Facebook page or tag someone, make this show, make this program available to those that need to be awakened, those that need to become aware of circumstances and situations around us, even beyond the pulpit. Social issues as they relate to black and brown people in these yet to be United States. Do your part to help our Facebook presence as well as our YouTube presence. You can press the notification bell, like, share, comment. The same holds true with Facebook. The comment section is yours. Like, share, comment, and make sure that you're being notified each time a live stream is released. Of course, we do this podcast live each Monday evening, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and it's our happy privilege and pleasure to bring this information to you exactly where you are. So please take a moment and share now. And one of the things that can help our community vastly grow, vastly become more effective and not affected is our ability to share information. We called it in business many years ago, SYI. Share your information, make people to become informed. And an informed electorate is a powerful electorate. The constituency of people who bring others into office as representatives of themselves and of the community are the people who have to be informed in order to bring good candidates into play in the political forum. And politics affects everyone. Please know that. Believe it. Politics affects everyone. Politics affects, I've noticed since being in Birmingham, Alabama, a place I said I'd never live. And I'm very happy to have been here. Happy to be here now and glad for the assignment. But I've noticed since living here how politics affects people's living conditions. I've noticed over the last few years that the inner city residents were put out, so to speak. White residents who once owned the inner city migrated to the burbs, the suburban landscape, and the project Section 8 living governmental housing came into the inner city and dominated it. I'm telling you. And then as the years have gone on, politics have become involved and migrated people from Section 8 living, governmental housing, so forth and so on. And now, to my surprise and maybe even chagrin, those areas where blighting took place, eyesores, the diminishment of house values and property values and so forth and so on, now are on the rise. We have in the inner city of Birmingham, Alabama, if you'd believe it, we have living spaces, lofts that go anywhere from $300,000 to $1 million and beyond, north of $1 million in the same inner city on the same property where Section 8 living formerly occurred. And if you think that politics weren't involved in that, if you think that redlining and drawing where development was going to take place. If you think that isn't political, if you think the control of dumping in your communities and where new construction goes and where food deserts are ended by way of putting grocery stores, that's all political. It all happens by way of tax abatements and things of that nature to incentivize companies and businesses to come. If you think that doesn't have an effect on the school system, you're wrong. Politics affects and impacts everything. I could go on, but that's not our show tonight. We're doing again edition 2. Election 2020, edition 2, election 2020, the love affair between President Trump and white evangelicals. Now, let me be clear. Allow me to be clear. I am an evangelical, and I'll define that term as we go along. I am an evangelical, with the exception of being white. I do hold fast to the Protestant faith, and those are those who call themselves Christians, and I like better to refer to them as believers, those who believe in the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus Christ, those who believe that salvation comes by grace as an act of grace. Jesus' death on the cross, bringing us into right relationship with the Father through, of, and by his blood, and by his blood only. Those persons, in a very broad and general sense, are referred to as evangelicals. Now, the white evangelicals have created this love affair with this president, number 45, for some reason or another. Now, I did an earlier show where it was revealed by way of a YouTube video. One of the white evangelicals who was at the table broke away from that mindset and released the information of deals that were cut while he was at the table and engaged. I will not go back into that at this point in time. I may mention it just in a moment's time or not. We'll just have to see how far we're able to get. But the real big thing here is tonight I want to deal with what is this love affair? How is it that we can have men and women who are aligned with truth, the truth of God's word, allegedly, backing up, supporting someone with such egregious past, present, and apparently future actions? But let's go on. Many people would say to me, George Matthews, you're a pastor. You should go in your church and do church business and leave the world to itself. As a matter of fact, we had a pretty popular megachurch pastor of color in Los Angeles, California. I will not call names unless I have to, and I'll be even handed with this because I haven't called white evangelicals names up until this point, even though the Apostle Paul did call names. He dedicated the entire book of 2 Timothy, the last chapter, to all the persons who forsook him, all the persons who were duplicitous as far as ministry was concerned, all the persons who were not faithful. He called them by their names. And there was a roll call. I mean, literally. So I'm well within my rights to do so. I choose not to do so at this point. But I haven't referred to white evangelicals who've been blatant in their criticism of black and brown people while pastoring churches that have 30 and 40% of black and brown people. But they made statements that are very disparaging, statements that if I, a person of color, were a member of their congregation, there's no way in America, no way in the world, no way in the universe I could continue to sit under a man or woman, allegedly, in air quotes, of God, who would make disparaging comments or comments of their heart, and at least you know where they are, but comments of their heart that would disparage my people. There's no way. That's a plantation mentality. Well, that once people have defined themselves on a regular and consistent basis, when you have people who consistently show you who they are, believe the definition. It's a self-definition. And so there's no way in the world I could stay there. I would have to find another church. I would have to find another man or woman of God, someone who could speak to my particular purposes. But at the very least, I could not support them if they were disparaging my purpose here on the earth, and if they would bring purpose down to color. There's no way in the world, because this is a separation. This is a pull away. This is a pull apart from an assignment given by God. Every assignment given by God should be absent of color, barriers of color. The scripture says over in the book of Galatians chapter 3, you can begin at verse 26 all the way to verse 29. In the essence of it, it says, because of Jesus, because we have been brought into the family of God, and we've already understood that by one blood, God made all nations, all ethnoses, all ethnic groups, which means that all other things being equal, if a black man gives a blood transfusion to a white man, if their blood types match, as long as it's blood, they can the blood can be transfused, the blood can be transferred. It's just that simple, and there is no separation in the eyes of God. But in the eyes of men, and I could not sit under a leader. I could not and would not. And I'm aghast at black and brown people who sit at the feet of plantation masters, really, who guise themselves as evangelical spiritual leaders and disparage people of color who are supporting them, who are members of their congregation. That's just amazing to me. But one of the things that happens here is that people believe that and it was evidence this past weekend, past Sunday, a very popular church in Los Angeles, California, specifically in the Crenshaw area of Los Angeles, California, church that was passed on to a son by his well-renowned father, who is still with us, thankfully, the author of many books and credited with breaking the color barrier as far as national ministers being on national television is concerned in the 70s. And so we owe him a great credit, black and brown persons and ministers who are able to engage their audiences by way of television. But he's passed his church on to his son, and the son made a statement which I heard him say that it is okay, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, for Christians to opt out of voting. I'm aghast again, because we are in the world and not of the world, and because we as believers or Christians, as he alluded, are under no obligation by God to vote and let the world handle worldly affairs. He made this statement this past Sunday. And there's just so much I could say about that. Apparently someone hasn't told him, number one, about our podcast. If he would listen to that, he might learn something. But apparently someone didn't tell him that Jesus said, you're the salt of the earth in St. Matthew chapter 5. And if the salt has lost its influence or savor, it is thenceforth, from that point on, or henceforth, some would say, good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under the feet of men. So by that very statement, it tells us that the church, people who love Jesus, are obligated and by God. God is expecting us to influence the world's system without the influence of Lot in Sodom. But for that, the cities were 5 cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah, the plains of Shinar, Sodom and Gomorrah being 2 of the 5, and God could not destroy the city, those 2 cities, until Lot was expelled from the city. The 2 angels came from heaven and escorted Lot and his family out. Well, this gives us a real interplay of how God sees the world and his church, that as long as the church is in the world, I personally believe in the pre-rapture doctrine, that God will take the church out of the world before he returns. His return will emanate with his bringing the church out of the world, rapturing the church, snatching away is the Greek word for the word rapture. Because as long as the church is in the world cannot become as corrupt because it is expected that the church will influence the world. As a matter of fact, you remember over in the book of Genesis, maybe it's chapter 18 or so, where God is talking to Abram about Lot and about the impending destruction that is going to come. And Abraham says, wait a minute, God, if I may ask you a question. I have a nephew, Lot, who has loved the bright lights in the big city, and he was captivated by the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. He's made himself a friend there to the city. He said, God, if you destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's there. He says, God, if I find 50 righteous men in an entire city, will you not destroy it? And God says, absolutely not. He says, what about if I found 40, 35? God says, I won't destroy it. Brought it all the way down to 10. And God says, you find 10 righteous there, I won't destroy it. Well, Lot, Mrs. Lot, and their 2 daughters and their husbands, and that's it. So then, God was showing that if the believer is in the system called the world, it is not his intention to destroy it, nor is it his intention to see the world come to its ruinous end as long as the believer is there, because the believer is supposed to influence the world's system by not being a part of it, but yet bringing an influence of the culture of heaven to it. And so voting is how we make that happen. And I wanted to say, we talk about speaking truth to power. Give me just a few minutes to just work with that. Apparently, someone forgot to tell this pastor that it was Moses who spoke to the most powerful man in the then known world, a man by the name of the Pharaoh. That was his title, actually, the Pharaoh of Egypt. And he goes to Pharaoh rather, and negotiates on the behalf of God the release of God's people from 400 years of tyranny, 400 years of enslavement, and 400 years, as slavery does, of profitability for the nation of Egypt. And Moses walks in there as a servant of God and says, God said, let my people go. That is the church, a type of the church speaking or having influence in the political realm. It is the practice of speaking truth to power. I've got it ahead of myself, but it's in the Bible. So I'm justified tonight for this podcast. I know it's a part of my assignment, part of my calling. Dr. King says, in the end, what will be remembered in the end will not be the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Also, he goes on to say, nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And one of the reasons that we have this podcast, the pros of the show, is to defeat sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity both. So again, we have in Jefferson County voting in person, absentee voting. It's a kind of a conflicted sounding thing, but for the very first time, it becomes imperative that people understand that you can vote in person by absentee ballot in Jefferson, Shelby County, all over the state of Alabama, and probably all over the country. So you need to check with the clerk's office of the county court to understand exactly how the voting procedures are in your particular jurisdiction. And if voting doesn't matter, we dealt with this last week, if voting doesn't matter, why is there such an aberrant fight to suppress it? It does matter, and everyone knows it does. And so let's get into something. I wanted to talk a little bit more about some things, but I see my time is kind of catching up with me. Let's do this. Let's define the term evangelicals. When I use it, I would love for you to know what I mean. Allow me to be clear. I am not against my white brothers and sisters. I am, however, against their lack of truthfulness, and I must outcry any act of violation of the responsibility of truth. What is it? We call it the dereliction of duty. The dereliction of duty, where a person has a job, the person has a calling. We saw this in the Jefferson County Clerk's office, not the cutoff, but the clerk's office last week when there was an opportunity for Saturday voting. And by the way, it was brought on, thankfully, to God. And I'm understanding that there were nearly 1,000 votes cast in both the cutoff as well as the Jefferson County Saturday, the 17th of October, voting opportunity. And this coming Saturday, the 24th, there will be another. But the clerk stood in the way. And this is a Democrat. This is a person of color who said that they were overwhelmed. Their office was overwhelmed. Notwithstanding that the Jefferson County commissioners said that federal money was given to that office, over $250,000, $250,000, to prepare. That means you can hire people. This means you can become organized. This means you can retool, rethink your system. You can do whatever is necessary with $250,000. And you knew this day was coming. Well, when a person says they're overwhelmed, when a person tries to make their personal issues of a lack of preparedness, a lack of insight, a lack of knowledge as far as building the job, as far as growing the job and growing within the job, that can be called dereliction of duty. You had a duty by way of being voted in. You have a duty by way of having a job, an assignment being given to you, and your personal issues, your personal fallacies should not mitigate your responsibility. Well, the same holds true with ministers. You have a duty, a God-given responsibility. The Apostle Paul says to Timothy, preach the gospel, preach the word, be instant in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke with all long suffering. And he goes on to say that if you do this, the man of God will be, people of God will be thoroughly furnished unto every good work. So without the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ, without the truth of identifying that truth from fiction and from error or erroneous teaching, or maybe even intended error, heretical teachings, a heretic, you take away the real steam of what it is to be called. So a lot of my former heroes I still respect them for the work they've done in the kingdom of God, but they're not heroes any longer, and sheroes even, when you compromise truth and refuse to speak truth to power. But along with that, let's set that aside. I'm coming back. The term evangelicals or evangelicalism is really evangelical Christianity or evangelical Protestantism. Now, Protestantism includes the gamut of all religions outside of Catholicism, all Christ-centered. Now, notwithstanding, not including occult or non-Christ-centric, Christocentric reformations or denominations. So you have Christocentric, Christ-centered reformations or denominations such as Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalians. You have Word of Faith. You have Pentecostals, so forth and so on. And then you have the Catholic Church. It stands on its own pivot. So it's referred to in those terms, evangelical Protestantism, a worldwide trans-denominational movement. That's what I just described to you. Within Protestant Christianity, I just described that which is Christocentric other than the Catholic Church, that maintains the belief that the essence of the gospel consists of the doctrine of salvation by grace alone. By grace alone. There are 5 by and alone references under systematic theology, and by grace is one of them. You are saved by grace through the work of Jesus Christ, solely through faith in Jesus's atonement, or his death, burial, and resurrection and ascension. So when we talk about this love affair, who is Donald Trump, and why and how can evangelicals be so fascinated with him and at the sacrifice of the truth about him? Well, who is he? We do not have to look far. And again, Jesus said, "You shall know a tree by the fruit it bears." We're not talking about examining one-time issues, or we're not talking about examining personal flaws that might be in a person's character, but we're talking about aberrant, just out and out, outlandish, without control activities that have defined by his own actions who this man is. So who is he? We don't have to look far. We've had 4 years of his own introduction of who he is. President Trump has 5 children from 3 marriages. Now I'm going to stop here. His opposite candidate in the Democratic candidate in the person of Joe Biden has been married to the same wife for a few decades. But this man has had 3 marriages, 5 children: Don Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Ivana, Tiffany, and, let's see. Don Jr. came from Ivanka. Eric Trump with Ivana Trump. Tiffany Trump with Marla Maples. Barron Trump with First Lady Melania Trump. Now, Melania Trump is the 3rd wife again. She was born on April 26, 1970 in Yugoslavia. Yes, that's Russia, common day Russia. Formerly a model, so forth and so on. Now, I pulled some information from McSweeney's Internet Tendencies. McSweeney's Internet Tendencies is the source. Now, listen to their self-designation, who they are, who are McSweeney's, who are they? What is McSweeney's Internet Tendencies? Well, it's the complete listing so far, in parentheses or in a parenthetical, atrocities on the behalf of President Donald John Trump from 1 to 940 atrocities. So February 10th, who is he? We're just looking now. February 10th, 2011, Donald Trump stoked false claims that Barack Obama had lied about his education. During a speech to the Conservative Political Action Conference, Trump said, quote, "Our current president came out of nowhere. In fact, I'll go a step further. The people that went to school with him, they never saw him. They don't know who he is. It's crazy," end quote. This is false. Numerous accounts from Obama's college classmates refute Trump's claim, including former President Obama's former roommate at Columbia, Phil Domer. March 30th, 2011, Donald Trump was a vocal proponent of the birther, quote unquote, myth. I'll just read it. Claiming Barack Obama was not born in the United States in 2011, Trump told Bill O'Reilly, quote, "If you're going to be president of the United States, you have to be born in this country." It seems like he has festered a long time hate for the first black president of this country. Now, allow me to stop here and say this. I do not agree, and I'm not a proponent of everything that President Barack Obama birthed, so to speak, or gave credence to out of his administration, his two-term administration. No more than he probably would be if I were president for 2 terms. I don't sanction some of the things that the Democrats have sanctioned. But as it relates to politics, the issue is you have two major candidates, one from the Democratic side of the aisle, the other from the Republican side of the aisle. And you can't opt out. You're the salt of the earth. So salt doesn't, yeah, that's good. Salt cannot choose the food that it influences. It's salt. It's going to influence whatever food you place it in. If you put salt in water, it's going to become salt water because that salt's going to override the flavor of it. If you put salt on meat, too much salt, any salt at all for me, you'll know it's there. If you put it in a vegetable, you'll know it's there. You're not the salt of the earth, if that's a metaphor, and it is, to choose what you influence. The fact is you choose to be the influence. You make the best choice of the candidates that you have to serve your best interest and the community's best interest of which you represent, and you salt that, you influence that, you enhance that, you bring out the best in that. And I think when we look at it as believers, as most of us probably are, you're looking for that. And so he was a vocal proponent of the birther myth, claiming Barack Obama, former president, was not born here. He says, if you're going to be president of the United States, you have to be born in this country. And there is a doubt as to whether or not he was. A longtime hater. This is 2011. He doesn't have a birth certificate. He may have one, but there's something on that, maybe religion. Maybe it says he's a Muslim. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want that, or maybe he may not have one. But I will tell you this. If he wasn't born in this country, it's one of the greatest scams. Oh, my God, I know he didn't use that word. It's one of the greatest scams of all time, end quote. In response to the birther conspiracy theory, the state of Hawaii released former President Barack Obama's short and long form birth certificate. It's out there online. You can research it. And so August 6th, 2012, over a year after the White House released Obama's long-term birth certificate, Donald Trump again promoted the birther myth, tweeting, quote, an extremely credible source has called my office and told me that Barack Obama's birth certificate is a fraud. I know this word wasn't used again. Scam, fraud. Let's just go on. President Trump has publicly attacked media outlets for citing anonymous sources, but has himself cited anonymous sources numerous times to support the claim that Barack Obama lied about his biography. Not so. June 16, 2015, in his speech announcing his candidacy for president of the United States, Donald Trump said, when Mexico, quote, sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. Love his verbiage and his extensive vocabulary. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people. So if you're Latino or of Latin descent, Mexican, Latino, Hispanic, or otherwise, you should pay attention here. June 16, 2015, in the same speech announcing his candidacy, Donald Trump said, I will build a great wall, quote, and nobody builds walls better than me. Wait for it to drop for the people in the back left of the room. Believe me, and I'll build them very inexpensively. I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will make Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words. We've marked your words, Mr. President. Trump's belief that Mexico should finance construction for the wall led Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto to cancel a meeting with Trump in 2017. And again in February 2018, Pena Nieto has repeatedly said that Mexico will not pay for the border wall. July 18th, 2015, Donald Trump insulted the military service of Senator John McCain, the late Senator John McCain, a decorated Vietnam War veteran who endured torture in solitary confinement as a POW in Hanoi. Trump said in a speech at the Family Leadership Summit in Iowa, quote, he's not a war hero. He was a war hero because he was captured. I like people who weren't captured. Trump's comments drew boos from his audience in Iowa, as well as widespread condemnation from Republicans and Democrats alike. Donald Trump himself was, listen to this, exempted from military service, draft dodger. I didn't say that. Military service after receiving 4 student deferments. When you have money, that's what happens. 4 student deferments between 1964 and 1968 and a medical deferment. Ready for this? For a bone spur in his foot after graduating from college. I'll leave that right where it is. August 7th, 2015. During the first Republican primary debate in 2015, Donald Trump clashed with moderator Megyn Kelly regarding his many controversial statements against women. But just hang on, it's going to become more interesting. In one exchange, Trump claimed his disparaging remarks about women were limited to comments about Rosie O'Donnell, to which Kelly responded, quote, your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. I don't know what my white evangelical brothers are missing about this. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? ? The next day, Trump told a CNN interviewer that Kelly had been off base in the way she treated him. She just asked a question that most people won't ask to point to the truths of the matter. She gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions, quote, end quote. Trump said, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. Another insult, another vicious insult by implication, but because that's who he is. August 19th, 2015. In August of 2015, just 3 months after Trump announced his candidacy for president, 2 of his supporters in Boston beat a homeless Latino man with a metal pipe and then, wait for it, urinated on him. You see, let's just read. Asked by the arresting officer why they had done it, one of the attackers said Trump was right, quote, end quote. All these illegals need to be deported. During a press conference shortly thereafter, Trump said he hadn't heard about the assault. Quote, it would be a shame, end quote. He told the crowd of reporters before continuing, I will say the people that are following me are very passionate. They love this country. They love this country and they want this country to be great again. They are passionate. See, that's stoking the fire, so to speak, of racism. That's dog whistling. That's sending subliminal messages to those who are in the know to continue doing what you're doing. Like in the first presidential debate, to the Proud Boys. Yes. Stand by and stand back. Stand back and stand by. In other words, it was implied that I may need this kind of supremacy and this kind of racial divide to act as a shelter for me. He would imply if this candidacy and this race for the presidency for a second term is unsuccessful. And there are reasons for that. We'll get to that in another show. July 30th, 2016, Donald Trump belittled Kids and Ghazala Khan, the parents of a, please hear this, Muslim American soldier who had been killed while serving in the army. for their speech at the Democratic National Convention. In his speech at the DNC, Kit Khan had addressed Trump's stringent and anti-Muslim immigration policy, saying, quote, "Have you even read the United States Constitution? I will gladly lend you my copy. In this document, look for the words liberty and equal protection under the law." In response to the speech, Trump suggested that Khan had no right to criticize him. See, he's telling us by many of his actions that he has the mentality of an Adolf Hitler, of a Mussolini, of an emperor in China. He has this fascination, it seems, with one man ruling and not being questioned, being able to do whatever he wants to do, as a dictator would. April 2016, Jill Harth accused Donald Trump of sexual assault in a 1997 lawsuit. Harth stated in court documents that Trump harassed and groped her in 1993. She later dropped the suit but stood by her story. May 5th, 2016, for the Mexican holiday of Cinco de Mayo, Trump posted a photo of himself eating a taco bowl to Facebook and Twitter, captioned, "Happy Cinco de Mayo. The best," I'm quoting now, "the best taco bowls are made in Trump Tower Grill. I love Hispanics." You see, that's just a direct, I'll just read it. May 2016. Temple Taggart, former Miss Utah in the 1997 Miss USA pageant, claimed Donald Trump sexually harassed her. Taggart said that Trump, on multiple occasions, had kissed her on the lips without consent. June 2016. Now, this is the year, I'm just counting backwards to his announcement of his candidacy, to his run for the White House. There's much more to come. June 2016, Cassandra Searles, Miss Washington 2013, accused Donald Trump of sexual misconduct at the Miss USA pageant. Searles posted a photo of contestants with Trump on Facebook saying, quote, "One guy treated us like cattle," and proceeded to have us lined up so he could get a closer look, hear it, at his property. At his property. Now, white evangelicals can't see this. I'm coming somewhere with this. Here it is, October 7th, 2016. In the 2005 Access Hollywood tape, Donald Trump, hear this, bragged to Billy Bush, we all know who he is, about grabbing women by their genitals without consent. In the video published by the Washington Post, Trump said, "I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the," and there's a colloquial expression there that is used in the hood, okay? And I won't, out of my respect for our female listeners, I won't use the term, but you can search it out and you will see it. Trump said his statements were, quote, end quote, locker room banter. This is a man in his quest for president, and apologized if anyone was offended. He later issued a further response to the tape's release saying, "I never said I'm a perfect person. We never asked you to be. We never asked you to be, but we do expect you to be presidential. We do expect you to have a percentage of better actions than we do deplorable actions. We do expect you to not lie, tell the truth, even if it's injurious to your own character. We do expect you to give a better example from even poor decisions that you've made yourself. We can respect that. Nobody in America is looking for a perfect president, but we certainly aren't looking for people, first of all, who are liars about their own actions, and then for the church, the white church, to back them up and then come to us looking for support, their support. That's wrong. October 7th, 2016, Donald Trump reiterated his false claim that the young men known as the Central Park Five were guilty of sexually assaulting a jogger in 1989, despite DNA evidence that exonerated them. Now, these men, the story is out there, and I wept. I wept to see these men lose the youthfulness of their lives. And he was one of the largest proponents by taking out full New York Times ads, full-paged ads, going on various media circuits and convicting these 5 men because they were brought in by the New York Police Department, NYPD, and it was found that none of these men were guilty. None of these men were guilty. And he has never come back, not even as president, when he had the power to do so, to retract the statement and make those men whole again as best they could, because they're of the wrong hue. They're of the wrong hue. October 11th, 2016, Tasha Dixon, a former Miss Universe contestant, accused Donald Trump of sexual misconduct. Dixon asserted that Trump walked into their changing room in 2001 while contestants were changing. On the Howard Stern show in 2005, Trump said about the pageant, quote, "I'll go backstage before a show and everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And no men are anywhere, and I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. They're standing there with no clothes, and you see these incredible looking women, and I sort of get away with things like that." It's your president. It's your president. This is who white evangelicals by far are backing. And this is why I can't be silent, nor will I be. October 12th, 2016, Mariah Bilodeau, a former Miss U.S. teen pageant contestant, claimed that Donald Trump behaved inappropriately during the pageant. Bilodeau, said that in 1997, Trump walked into the changing room when contestants were not fully clothed. She is one of 4 former Miss Teen USA contestants to tell the same story of Trump's sexual misconduct. No white evangelical brothers and sisters are addressing this at all. October 12th, 2016. This is leading up to the November successful election to Donald Trump as president of these yet to be United States. And 4 years later, the probably largest bloc group he has supporting him are white evangelicals, people who are supposed to be so Christianized, so in love with Jesus and the truth of Jesus, that they, regardless of color and regardless of respect of persons, are committed to the truth. But there's a love affair. October 12th, 2016, Rachel Crooks claimed Donald Trump sexually harassed her. Crooks said that when she met Trump for the first time in 2005 while working as a receptionist for a company in Trump Tower, Trump would not let go of her hand and inappropriately kissed her. October 12th, 2016, Jessica Leeds alleged Donald Trump made inappropriate sexual advances toward her. Over 30 years ago, Leeds sat next to Trump on a plane where he lifted the armrest, grabbed her breasts, and put his hand up her skirt. She described him as a quote-unquote octopus, saying his hands were everywhere. October 12th, again, Mindy McGilvery accused Donald Trump of groping her. McGilvery alleged that Trump touched her without her consent while she was attending a concert at Mar-a-Lago in 2003, property he owns. October 12th again, Jennifer Murphy, a former contestant on the television show The Apprentice, said that Donald Trump kissed her without her consent after a job interview in 2005. She claimed that he had made multiple inappropriate comments to her while she was on the show, and when she met him with him later about a job opportunity. Natasha Stornoff, a journalist, accused Donald Trump of sexual harassment. Stornoff said that Trump insisted on giving her a tour of his Palm Beach estate while she was interviewing him and his wife Melania. Trump pinned her to a wall and kissed her. Trump called her a liar and responded to Stornoff's story saying, "Look at her. Mr. President, look at her." I don't think so. October 13th, Lisa Boyne accused Donald Trump of sexual misbehavior. Boyne asserted that at a dinner, Trump and modeling agent John Casablancas paraded women in front of their table looking under their skirts to determine whether each woman was wearing underwear. Christian Anderson claimed Donald Trump groped her in the early 1990s. Anderson was at a club in Manhattan with friends when she asserted Trump reached into her skirt and touched her without consent, leaving her and her friends very grossed out. Samantha Holvey described Donald Trump's sexual misconduct 2006 Miss USA pageant. While participating in the competition, Holvey noted that Trump inspected each contestant before the event. She noted he would step in front of each girl, look you over from head to toe like you were just meat. We were sexual objects and not people. Summer Zervos, a former contestant on The Apprentice, accused Donald Trump of sexual assault. Zervos claimed that Trump assaulted her on several occasions, kissing and grabbing her, and during one business meeting began thrusting his genitals. Kathy Heller accused Donald Trump of sexual misconduct. Heller said she was having Mother's Day brunch, 1997, Mar-a-Lago, when Trump grabbed her, tried kissing her, became very angry when she twisted away. Karen Virginia accused Donald Trump of groping her. The U.S. Open. Jessica Drake, an adult film actor and director, accused Donald Trump of inappropriate sexual conduct. Nene Leekson, a former Miss Finland, alleged that Donald Trump had sexually harassed her. Now listen to this. This is November. Without citing evidence to support his claim, Donald Trump tweeted, "In addition to winning the electoral college in a landslide, I won the popular vote." This is after his election. "If you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally." This claim has been repeatedly debunked. Then the end of the year, December. He's 1 month or so in office. Donald Trump's senior advisor, Jared Kushner, incoming national security advisor, Michael Flynn, all these names are flagrant at this point in time, and Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak met at Trump Tower to establish a line of connection. The meeting occurred around the time that the Obama administration was placing sanctions on the Russian government for interfering in the 2016 election. January 2017, Donald Trump's lawyer, Sherry Dillon, stated that Trump would voluntarily donate all profits from foreign government payments made to his hotel to the U.S. Treasury. He's a president who has been benefiting by way of having U.S. business, if you will, conducted in his property. Now, I'm going to give you something in just one moment. But he says, I'm going to donate all profits that come while I'm president to the U.S. Treasury. 2 months into his presidency, no evidence existed that Trump had followed through on his promise. If Trump did accept payments from foreign states through his businesses, as his lawyer claimed, he may have been in violation of the emollients clause of the U.S. Constitution. This clause forbids, listen to this, government officials from accepting, quote, any present, emollient, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. January. I'm trying to get to this. After accusing him of sexual misconduct, Summer Zervos also filed a defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump. Zervos claimed Trump had tarnished her reputation when he issued false statements against her and others who had accused him of sexual harassment, calling them, quote unquote, liars who were telling their stories for 10 minutes of fame. Here we are. Within hours of his inauguration, Donald Trump took aim at the Affordable Care Act in his first executive order as president. Do you understand? If this man is elected to the presidency for the second term, the first order of business, as he is indicating, is to destroy the Affordable Health Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. And many of his constituency are people who are living beneath the poverty line in this country. These are the people who will not be able to have insurance coverage. If for instance, Donald Trump was not who he is, President Donald Trump is not who he is, and he actually had COVID, that would be classified as a pre-existing condition. He would be denied insurance. He would be denied insurance in this country if he is successful in carrying out his wicked strategy to abate everything that the man of color, who is probably going to go down in history as the greatest president this country has ever seen, in the person of President Barack Obama. It just seems as though there's this coalition of white men in general. I'm just voicing my thoughts, who have such a hatred for the fact that President Barack Obama graced 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for 8 years, a black man in a White House. Now that is a conundrum of thought, a walking conundrum, that they want to erase even the stigma associated with his color being able to successfully guide this country. This president rides, at least for the first 2.5 years, on a healthy economy. But that was left him. He inherited a healthy economy. He didn't inherit the economy that President Obama inherited from the Bush administration. But to inherit a healthy economy, now he's ruined it, as he has the businesses. I think he's been bankrupt at least 5 times, perhaps 6, with millions left him by his father. And these men, these women, don't take the time to look into the truth. So I don't have I'm not afforded all of the time I want to have tonight. We'll get back into it next week, because I want to just raise these 3 issues. So why are evangelicals, who are supposedly bound to a commitment to God, why do they love this man? Why do they love this man at the expense of their commitment to God? How can you not see what is being, and I'm just talking about character issues here. We're not even talking about policy issues. We've seen the lack of care for black and brown people. Just Google Puerto Rico and see what kind of assistance they have received from this government, because that's a country of brown people. And it goes on. The list goes on. We can go. I just don't have time to go there tonight. Second question: Why are these men and women, evangelicals, white evangelicals, why are they not vocal and verbal about his character, his demeanor, his behavior? When David, second king of Israel, committed just one act, one act of what was it? An indiscretion, and the one act was his adulterous affair with Bathsheba, and then the second act that followed thereafter was his assassination of Uriah, her husband, his general. But then there came, in walks, the next scene, in walks a man by the name of Nathan. He comes to the king and he gives him a parable. And after the king, who was a very passionate man, King David, hears about this, he said, who is the man that has taken this one EWE lamb from this poor family that has this lamb raised up, and it's a member of the family, and this wealthy man comes and takes the lamb and kills it and eats it. He said, who is this man? He said, because when I find him, I'll kill him. And Nathan looked at David in a suspenseful dramatic way and says, David, thou art the man. That's what these evangelicals are supposed to do. They're supposed to be apologists. Theologically, that's a term that means defenders of the faith, protectors of the faith. They're not supposed to compromise faith for power. Now, there's this thing, I need to say this, and I'm probably getting close to my time. Why is the only issue that these white evangelicals balance their retort of this man's character? They balance it based on one issue, that he says he is against abortion. Well, here's where we have to be as believers. It's, God gave Adam, the very first man, he proved he gave him volition. He said, here's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and here's the tree of life. 2 trees. It's your choice. He says, but now stay away from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God did not come and banish Adam's choices. Adam still had a choice. He had free volition. Man has volition. We do not need a government that legislates our volition. People have the right to be wrong. They have the right to choose wrong. I don't agree with all the things the Democrats have put forth as far as governmental policies are concerned on particular matters. But people have the right to be wrong. People have the right to go to heaven. They have the right to go to hell. God will judge us individually, because if you try to legislate people's decision, the next thing you're going to have is a political state. That means that the state will choose all of your choices for you. I mean, you will have a state-run ecumen, a state-run church. In other words, you go in some of these foreign countries and the religion there is Islamic, because that is the decision of the powers that be. So you can't just balance this and say, well, he's pro-life. We're going to look past everything else. Nathan didn't do that. Nathan went to David and said, you got one issue. Well, yea, 2. He says, but until you turn yourself over to God, it is not going to go well for you. Now, they have a second issue, and that's gun control. But they look over all of these other weighty matters. And because of this man's prominence, because of his position, they ignore these barometers of his indiscretions and barometers of his mindset. I'm going to close, but allow me to just say this. I'm really close to my time, and I'm trying to respect yours. But there's this thing about speaking truth to power. I want to read something to you. When you talk about speaking truth to power, what does it mean? God expects us to do so. I talked to you earlier at the opening of this podcast about it was Moses who spoke truth to power. Moses, a man of God, went to the political official, the then most powerful man in the world, the Pharaoh of Egypt, and he demanded that the people of the Israelitic people should be let go with favors. So speaking truth to power is having the courage to address a subject where wrong is involved. Where wrong is involved. If we can't trust men and women of God, white evangelicals or evangelicals at all, if we can't trust them to balance the issues of right versus wrong, if I can't trust you on that, then you're not worth the salt of your body, the amassed salt of your body. So having the courage to address the subject where wrong is involved, where people of power and influence are also involved, rather than keeping silent, which in most cases is easier. So when you speak truth to power, it takes courage to do so. I mean, my father, I thank God for even his memories today. He would tell us, as he was raising us, he said, son, there's only right and wrong. He said, even if it's me, if I'm wrong, I'm just wrong. I'm your father who is wrong. He said he never compromised, as I know of, when it came to truth. And when you don't have truth, you really are putting yourself in a quagmire, so to speak, where the lines are so blurred that when you can't come out and deal with truth about one thing, then you may be hiding truth about something else, which is just as bad as a lie. When you hide the truth, you might as well tell a lie, because they're the same. You're still absent of the truth, the power and the poignancy of a matter that comes when truth is unveiled and protected. Allow me to close. I read something by Neely Fuller Jr. Neely Fuller Jr. Please research him. He's a very interesting character, historian of sorts. And I quote, "If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you." You like me to read that again? Neely Fuller Jr. If you do not understand white supremacy, now I don't advocate supremacy, nor do I advocate inferiority. I believe that all men are treated equal, but you have to see all races as men, as humans. And that's what this country has failed to do. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else you understand will only confuse you. I think that is so profound. Well, I close. Business philosopher Jim Rohn, please vote. Get in early. Vote your convictions. Allow the Holy Spirit, allow God himself, allow the track record of this present administration to speak to you. Jim Rohn makes this statement: sincerity, and I quote, "is not a test of truth. We must not make this mistake. He must be right. He is so sincere. It is possible to be sincerely wrong. We can only judge truth by truth and sincerity by sincerity. Just as there's a time to keep silent, there's also a time to speak." Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 7, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. We cannot be silent any longer. Silence is golden, as you heard it said. However, it's golden only until one's family and friends are negatively impacted and affected by wrongdoing. Silence is great until someone's voice is necessary to save your life or corroborate your innocence. Silence is compromise. Silence is complicity with erroneous thinking. Silence is agreement with sanitized, whitewashed history. Silence is co-signing with control, racist, bigoted, and supremacy mentalities. Liberty and justice end where there is silence. Until next week, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, I bid you God's best. And it's my prayer for you and yours that you will vote like your life And all you have worked so very hard to accomplish is on the line, because it is. Until next week, Godspeed. Blessings.